It's 28 degrees.
And now, the fabric of family.
Hi, I'm Barry Gilreath, your host today for Fabric of the Family. We have with us two guests who have been with us in previous programming talking about questions that are important to families. And we are addressing a subject today of what I want my children to know. And to help us do that, I have with me Brother Trey Cook and Brother Chad Dolahide. These brethren have both been with us before, and we're appreciative of the good work that they are doing for this programming as well as in their local works. We're going to go ahead and get right into our programming today, and want to begin with Trey. Trey, as a father, what are some things that you want your children to know? How about providing us one thing you want your children to know?
Okay. Well, one important issue that we all face today, and especially the youth, is entering into the marriage covenant. I would like my children to know what God's law is, what the Bible actually says about the sanctity of marriage.
What do you mean, sanctity of marriage?
Well, marriage is a very serious thing. Marriage is ordained of God. It didn't start with man, but God said that for Adam, it wasn't good for him to be alone. He needed a helpmate. And so God ordained marriage, the institution of marriage.
And marriage is what?
Marriage is simply a covenant between God and man and his wife.
All right. So you said man and his wife because we hear today of the marriage of two men or the marriage of two women, but that's not something that's in keeping with the Scriptures, correct?
Absolutely not. The Scripture speaks of those things, men with men and women with women, as an abomination, particularly in Romans chapter 1.
All right. So marriage is a covenant that is entered into by two parties in conjunction with God, whereby they commit themselves to one another and do such for what period of time? Just maybe, are we saying maybe until they get tired of one another? Is that acceptable?
Well, that may be the thinking of man today and our society even today. But the Bible says differently about those things. Marriage should be a covenant between two people for a lifetime. Until death do they part. And of course, there is only one exception given by Jesus, and that is recorded as in Matthew 19.
Matthew 19, I believe it's verse 9, is it not, Chad?
Yes.
What does Matthew 19:9 say?
Well, if we just turn over there and read it. This is a passage that is also misunderstood in the religious world today, but it's very clear-cut.
Okay.
And Jesus said in verse 9, "And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery." And so we see, first of all, God's law for marriage is a man and a woman for life. But there is an exception, and it's a special exception. And there's only one, and that's fornication. And this is some special sin. It's hard for a person to get over that sin. And so Jesus here has made an exception, and that is fornication.
You know, I remember a number of years ago hearing the late Guy Woods, passed away several years ago, but he was at the Freed Hardeman University lectures, and he was the speaker for the open forum. And I remember hearing him quote this passage, Matthew chapter 19, verse 9. And I'll never forget the way that he discussed this. He says, after he read the passage, he says, okay, now what does that mean? And he simply re-quoted the passage. And he says, okay, now interpret that. And he quoted the passage. And he says, but okay, now I'll explain it. And he quoted the passage. And he said, brethren, it doesn't need explaining. It just needs believing. You know, this subject that certainly is controversial among some people today is a subject that Jesus addressed in a very straightforward fashion, in a very simple fashion. In fact, a person would have to have help to miss what Jesus said. Whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and marries another, committeth adultery. And whoso marries her that hath been put away, committeth adultery. You know, the subject that you brought up, Trey, is one that truly has an impact upon families. And of course, this program deals with issues related to families. And so this ties in so well to the things that we talk about here on this program. And that is the impact and effect that divorce has upon the family. Who is affected by divorce? Chad?
Well, everyone in the family, but especially, it seems, the children. And I have an opinion on this general subject of marriage, that we sometimes, and I say we, all of us, whether it be in the world or in the church, sometimes I think we focus so much on who can remarry, when is it scriptural to remarry, and obviously we've been forced into a situation where we have to talk about that, and I'm not condemning that. But so many times, I think we need to start making marriages work before it gets to that point where a couple is divorced. You know, let's strengthen our marriages, because I can remember as a child, I mean, I can just hear my mother's words so clearly in my ears even to this day. Chad, when you get married, you're married. Don't come back home. Don't think you're going to get in a fight and come back here looking for sympathy. When you get married, that's your wife. And we love you, and we'll still help you in any way that we can. But you two are making a home. When you say I do, you're going to have to do it. And I can just so clearly, over and over again, remember my mother telling me that. It's such a serious relationship. But, you know, as I mentioned, we've been forced into a situation where we have to talk about the situation of divorce and remarriage. But divorce, it hurts everybody. I mean, financially, emotionally, sometimes even physically, physical illness results from it. But most of all, spiritually, it hurts husband, it hurts wife, but 9 times out of 10, I believe, the people that suffer the most are the children.
Absolutely. Children oftentimes, or I say oftentimes, sometimes even believe that the reason mom and daddy's getting a divorce is because they think because of me, because of something I've said. I've not been the kind of child that I should have been, and that's why mom and daddy's unhappy and mom and daddy's not going to live together. And that's so sad. It's so sad. And it all gets back to, I think, some things that you touched on there, Chad, about the importance of mamas and daddies understanding that when they've entered into this scriptural relationship, that they are to stay in that scriptural relationship, with the exception, as Jesus gave, of fornication, whereby the innocent party, if they so elect, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are required to do such,
Right.
but if they so elect, they can leave that marriage and enter into another marriage scripturally. But now what about the guilty party?
Well, the guilty party, they're mentioned in verse 9. The person that is the fornicator in that relationship, if they marry another, Jesus said that whole relationship is adulterous now. Not just the act of fornication is the sin, but also that whole union is now become sinful. It's an adulterous marriage.
Good point. So the point here that as parents we want to make to our children is this: marriage is not to be entered into lightly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So many people do that today. We hear of movie stars and people who have a lot of prestige in the world today entering into their third and their fourth and their fifth, and And you know, Elizabeth Taylor, I don't know how many, she's had numerous marriages. And even some of these younger folks whom our young people sometimes look up to, who are unfortunately their role models. These individuals enter in marriage so lightly. What was it, Britney Spears, who on the spur of the moment, while she was in Las Vegas or somewhere over in that part of the country, she got married, and then the next day she wanted to dissolve the marriage. Well, you know, those may not be the exact facts concerning that, but it was something similar to that. But the point is, there are a lot of people today who enter in to this sacred union very, very lightly. And so our children need to be taught by us as their parents, from the time they're able to understand, the importance of making a wise choice concerning marriage. Because whoever you marry, if it is a scriptural union, you are bound by God in that union until the day that you die or your spouse dies, saving or with the exception of fornication. And then and only then can the innocent party remarry scripturally in the eyes of God. And so that is an excellent point that you brought. And I just hope that all of those who are parents out there today who are listening to this program will take that to heart and sit down and talk with their children about this important subject. Brother Chad, what is another thing that comes to your mind that you want to make sure that your children know about?
Well, as a parent, and we've mentioned several really good things that we want to make sure our children know about. One thing that we mentioned in a previous program that I thought about, you had mentioned the commercials where parents sitting down talking to their children maybe about smoking or about drugs. And it seems like I saw one of those where the commercial actually stated, if you don't talk to your children about drugs, someone will. And it may not necessarily be the person that you want.
Right.
And that's what I think about with all the things that we've mentioned, that we as parents want our children to know. If you don't talk to your children about marriage, somebody will. And it may be somebody saying things that are not acceptable in God's sight, such as homosexual marriage is okay, such as marriage is not a big deal. You can divorce and remarry for any reason at all. And so, you know, as parents, especially to anyone watching this show and to myself and all of us, we need to remember, if you don't talk to your children about these things, somebody will.
Somebody will, and they may draw the wrong conclusions from their peers, from the television that they watch, the programming, things they hear at school. And so, excellent point. Somebody will influence them about these matters. We need to make sure it's a parent who is approaching it from a biblical perspective.
Right. And so another thing that comes to my mind that we want to be sure of, that we want our children to know, is that is not to bring their cell phone when they record a program, but I want to be sure as a parent that my children know that that everybody in the world is not a Christian. Everybody in the world is not a good influence. Everybody in the world is not intent on helping them get to heaven. And so I want to be sure my children understand that, along with all these other good points that have been made. They need to understand that there's some bad people out there.
There definitely are. And, Chad, that's probably your wife calling, and she's probably wanting you to bring something home on your way back. But, these things like this happen from time to time while you're doing programming. But Chad, you do bring up an excellent point there, and that is our children need to know that not everyone in the world is a good person, that there are wicked people in this world. And something that comes to my mind as well is we teach our children how that they should be careful about talking to strangers and not just blindly trust someone. If you don't know this person, if you don't know anything about this person, don't talk to them, because there are a lot of bad people out there. Well, maybe in a similar way, we need to also encourage our children to think about their associations. You know,
Absolutely.
our associations are going to have an influence upon us. And the Bible points that out time and time and time and time and time again. I was thinking about over in Proverbs chapter 1. Let's go ahead and turn over to Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 1, beginning in verse 10 and going through verse 18. And Trey, if you don't mind, I'd like for you to read that for us.
10 through 18.
Yeah, begin in verse 10, go through verse 18. Now I want to stop you at various points as you're reading it and just make a few points. But the reason I want you to read this, Trey, is because this section of Scripture is very, very powerful, talking about the influence of those who are around us. Go ahead.
Sure. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, Come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill all our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path.
All right. So here are some individuals who are trying to influence a person to do wrong, a young person. And basically the advice of the inspired man here is, to put it in modern day terminology, just say no. Just say no. They're trying to entice you. Just say no. Continue, Trey.
Verse 16, For their feet run to evil, and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives.
You know, that's just a great passage where he says, you know, talks about the bird and how that in vain they lay the net before the bird. And his point is simply this: even an animal, a bird, and you know, we sometimes talk about a bird brain. A bird has a very small brain, but a bird has enough sense to know that if there is a net or there is a trap that is set before him, that bird is going to be cautious. And there is an instinctive nature in that animal to be wary of that trap. And God's point is, we as human beings ought to have greater sense than these animals that are around us. And we need to understand that there are consequences to engaging in certain types of activities, and we don't need to go about those things blindly. You know, there is the example in the Old Testament of Samson and Delilah. And you remember how Samson cast his eyes upon a particular woman. And Judges chapter 14, the latter part of that in verse 3, Samson said unto his father, Get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. And Samson's mother and father were concerned about this choice of a companion that Samson was making, because she did not have the same value system as he had. And his idea was, you get her for me because she pleases me well. And you know, we need to teach our young people that there may be some folks out there whom have a lot of popularity and prestige. They may have some very desirous traits about them. The people that they date, this may be a person that is very attractive, but just because they're attractive on the outside, or just because they're appealing on the outside, does not mean that this is the kind of person that we need to be involved with. And so that is an excellent point, Trey, that you brought up, talking about how that there are wicked people in the world and how that we need to choose our companions wisely. Well, brethren, it is time to finish up with our program today. I want to thank both of you for coming and being with us. You've done a wonderful job, and I know that Trey, you need to get home and to your wife and get back with her. But it is good to be here today. And we want to thank you for being with us, and we hope that this program has been profitable to you. And if you have a question you would like to raise, just email us. The email address is there on the screen. And so until next time, I'm Barry Gilreath, wishing you a great day.
Did you know the Bible contains other names for Jesus besides Jesus or Christ? Well, it does. And understanding one of these names fully can change your life for the better. It's John chapter 1 and verse 14. It says this, "The Word was made flesh." The name used for Jesus here is simply the Word. Here's the significance. Jesus was the pure truth personified. He's the only man who could accurately wear the name Word, and through him, God communicated His will for our lives. You see, in His love for us, our God didn't just say, "Here's the law, you follow it." He said, "Here's my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. Hear ye Him." Matthew 17:5. I'm Glenn Colley from the Church of Christ, hoping you make the most of your minutes.
Hello, I'm Jim Dearman.
Speech on. Stream and track it back button. Adjust playback position. GB and FDF 0. Skip to next marker. Audio GUI 69. 3 of control center. Use hearing div page 1 of screen mirror brightness selected. Screen record. Use volume. Music hearing device page 1 screen mirror brightness 9 selected. Screen record.